Andrew Yang went on Fox News and he spoke to Neil Cavuto, and he pitched him a question here about Elizabeth Warren hating the rich. And I have to say, I really don't like how Yang didn't push back on the framing of this question.
The rap against your party is that it may be led by the most vocal critics that hates rich people. Bernie Marcus, the co-founder of Home Depot, was on with me yesterday, railing against that sentiment from Elizabeth Warren. I want you to react to this. This is Bernie Marcus.
Sure.
Look at her. How much money is she worth today, and what the hell did she do to get that money? Did she work the way I worked? I doubt it very much.
What did you think of
that? I think that if the Democratic Party does antagonize anyone who's made a certain amount of money in our society, to me, you should be praising people who succeed, because many of them worked very, very hard to get where they are. And the question is, how do we balance the economy so that it works for more people?
The fact that he didn't push back on how Warren was categorized and how the left was categorized is really disappointing. Come on, Andrew. Come on. You know, forget being a critic of going on Fox News. I'm a proponent of lefties going on Fox News. I know, because I did it. And I remember when Elizabeth Warren had that grandstanding statement of like, I will not go on such terrible network, yes. And I was like, oh, pipe down. Like, what? Oh, you're so morally pure. Like, no, if you believe in your ideology, go and try to change people's minds. But what I don't like is you went into their house and agreed with them on a bullshit thing they were saying. To be fair, he didn't agree with them. He just didn't push back adequately when he needed to push back. The second that they try to pretend like, many people say that your party hates the rich, and some of the leaders of your party, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, hate the rich. What do you say in response to that? Your response has to be, no, Neil, that's ridiculous. They don't hate the rich. They're trying to create a system that is more fair, more just, more equitable, and still values hard work. And that's why this gets under my skin, is that the notion that Cavuto and that weird old executive dude, owner dude who is trying to like go after Elizabeth Warren, the notion that they're trying to push out there is so immensely preposterous. And he was like, what did she do to earn that money? I bet she didn't work as hard as me. This is the mindset. I don't know how much money that guy has. He's either a multimillionaire or a billionaire. But that's the mindset from this guy. Like, oh, I'm the only one who worked really hard, and Elizabeth Warren other people working hard. I got news for you. Some of the people who I've met in my life who were the hardest working were living under the poverty line. I know people who had 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and they were barely scraping by. And Andrew Yang has said, and I give him credit for using this line. By the way, I started using this line at least 5 years ago, but your economic value is not the same as your human value. He says that too. And when that guy says, oh, what has she done? Oh, I work really hard. What has she done? The response to that has to be, well, actually, other people work really hard too. And actually, some of the people who you think are lazy are some of the hardest workers out there. And we have a system that doesn't reward hard work. You could be really busting ass and still barely getting by. The minimum wage is not a living wage. You could work a full-time job and not make enough money to survive. And that's the point. The point is the system is not objective. It's not fair. It's not a 100-yard dash where people all start at the 0-yard line and then you shoot the gun in the air and they all go. That's not what it's like. And they live under the assumption that the myth of meritocracy is true. That's what Neil Cavuto believes, and that's what the guest who is trying to go after Elizabeth Warren believes. And the fact of the matter is, the person who has $1 billion, what's the number? I'm forgetting the number. I think it's over 60% of wealth is inherited. So stop and think about that. You have people out there who are billionaires who pass away and they pass on multi-millions of dollars to their kids, and they never worked a day in their life. They never did anything. Spoiled little brat kids who now don't have to work a day in their life from now until they die. Republicans, when they talk about social safety net programs and when they talk about like food stamps and welfare, they're like, you got to work for what you're going to get. Work. Shut up and go work for it. Work. Shut up and work. But then when it comes to the kids of billionaires, they're like, oh, no, you don't have to work. For you, we're not, seeping your drive to do well and your ambition by handing you over multiple millions of dollars. No. So the thing that Elizabeth Warren's calling for, and even more so Bernie Sanders, because he's further to the left and more of a social democrat than Elizabeth Warren is, what they're calling for is a system that's more fair, makes sense, is more equitable, and is more objective. And they want a system that rewards hard work. But they want the floor to be a reasonable floor. And there's no hating of the rich. Guys, if you take the Bernie's wealth tax plan and implement it, billionaires would still be billionaires. I know that Bernie has tweeted before that billionaires shouldn't exist, but his tax plan, his wealth tax plan, still allows billionaires to exist. So you're demonizing the wealthy by saying that a guy who has, $4 billion should have $2 billion. How dare you demonize the wealthy? That's not demonizing the wealthy, and the fact that it's spun as such is hilarious. And that's why it's upsetting that Andrew Yang didn't push back on that. Because the notion that Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren hate anybody is beyond absurd. They just want a system that works for people. And also, let's acknowledge the fact that extreme wealth, by its very nature, by its mere existence, threatens the structure and the function of governments. Because when you have such extreme wealth, you have this problem of corporate capture of the government, where you have so much wealth that you effectively are more powerful than the government, and you can buy the politicians to do your bidding and rig the rules in your favor, which is exactly the problem. So there's an argument to be made against extreme wealth simply from a democratic perspective, that if you want a democracy to function as it's intended to function, and yes, we are a constitutional republic, but also a representative democracy, if you want the system to function as it's supposed to function, then you can't have extreme wealth because that will corrupt the process up front. So, and this is all stuff that's just kind of swatted aside, and Andrew Yang acknowledges hey, we shouldn't be demonizing the wealthy. Nobody is demonizing the wealthy, Andrew. Nobody's demonizing the wealthy. Nobody. If you're talking about ticking up marginal tax rates, if you're talking about a wealth tax, which I know that Andrew Yang disagrees with, and that's fair enough, man, you could disagree with the wealth tax, but you most certainly should acknowledge that if somebody supports a wealth tax, that doesn't mean that they hate the rich. This is the same stuff, I run into this all the time when I debate conservatives, is they love to tell you what's going on in your head. How about you piss off and let me explain myself? How about that? Well, I think that you think this. I don't care what you think, I think. I'm right here. Ask me. Ask me. So when they go, oh, yeah, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie, they hate the rich. For you to not know that their response would be, that's ridiculous, and you to feed into that talking point, come on, man. Come on, dude. What are you doing, man? You're better than that. You're better than that. Oh, that's so frustrating. This reminds me when Tulsi went on Dave Rubin's show, and Dave Rubin was like, a lot of the Democrats are supporting open borders, and Tulsi's like, yeah, I don't agree with open borders. You're allowed to push back and be like, actually, none of them are really calling for open borders. They're not doing that. Marianne Williamson went on the show and said that. I'm 100% in favor of going into hostile territory and trying to convince people, trying to sway people, getting people on your side. I'm 100% in favor of that. 100%. But if they set up a question for you that's a gross smear of people who are nominally on your side, you better correct it. Because there you just let them get away with it and fed right into the notion that, oh, well, obviously many people on the left just despise the rich. If you want to slightly increase the taxes of multimillionaires and billionaires, by no stretch of the imagination is that hating the rich, being against the rich. That's called fixing a terrible system and making it so everybody has equal opportunity and a shot to live a decent life. That should have been said.